All right, we are on air. This is the first Hangout for the CodeHike project, which spawned out of a conversation from CodeNewbie. So I imagine anyone watching or listening to this is probably already familiar with CodeNewbie because that's probably who's going to see it. But if you're not, check it out. It's codenewbie.org, right? And we're all in the Slack there in the CodeHike channel. So if you want to participate in the project, that's probably the best way to get started. So anyway, I'm just going to go around and make some introductions. My name is Russell. I have been a software developer for about 10 years. I mostly do JavaScript and Java code. And I kind of started the conversation about CodeHike. It is currently under my GitHub account. Maybe we'll put it into an org or something later if it gets any traction. And yeah, trying to get the thing moving along and have it open up as an opportunity to get a lot of people, maybe some people who haven't done as much code, to sink their teeth into a project with other people. So Jamie, what about you?
Hello, I am new to coding. I started out with doing Codecademy and Concademy and Coursera and anything I could get my hands off to try and teach myself how to code before finally enrolling in a local community college program. I already have degrees, and they're mostly humanities, and so I found that there were a lot of stumbling blocks, a lot of places that I was lost in trying to learn how to code. So I wanted to be involved in this to gain more experience, but also to help make it easier for others who might go through the same path I did.
Oh, cool. Christopher?
Hi, I'm Christopher. I've been coding for a little over 10 years on and off. Went to college for it. Just been freelancing most of the time. I really wanted to get into this project because I really like the idea behind it, helping people finding learning paths. But that and just something to really get myself into after years of not being able to do any code.
All right, great. So I think that's a perfect lead, and obviously you both mentioned the project itself. So what is the project? So basically, I feel like right now we're at a time where a lot of people are taking paths such as what Jamie took, alternative education paths, self-taught, or pulling things together from online courses or even college courses and then extended learning themselves. Honestly, I've been doing it 10 years. I did get a bachelor's degree, but I feel like most of what I do every day, I did teach myself. So, so in a way, I feel like most programmers are teaching themselves new things all the time. And there's a huge amount of resources on the internet right now. There's plenty of teach yourself to code resources online and other resources as well for more advanced things. But the idea behind CodeHike is not to be yet another one of those places. It's not about necessarily creating the content. It's not about, here we're going to be the 101st site that's going to teach you how to write JavaScript code. The idea is that first of all, no one of these places online teaches you everything or has a clear path. Even college doesn't have a clear path to teach you everything, far from it. There's so much information available out there, and there's so many things that people want to learn that the best way to learn as much as possible and as fast as possible is to use multiple resources. And so the idea of CodeHike is to be able to have people follow learning paths, basically. The analogy of the hike is that there's, you want to go for a hike, your hike is going from, not knowing code to, becoming a web developer, or, or maybe you're already a developer but you want to learn how to program games or something. To get there, to get from not knowing it to knowing it, you have to go through learning a lot of things. And there's a lot of pieces to that, learning how to use Git, learning how to write Java, learning how to read Ruby, learning more about the web in general, learning about jQuery. All of these pieces are things that other people have done before. And again, anyone who's done it, they haven't just taken one class. They haven't just gone to one resource and said, all right, this is it, beginning to end, I've got it. They tend to go to a resource, and while they're doing that resource, they may look at other resources to help them with questions they have with the first resource. They may read several books. They may have many pieces in place. And so the idea of CodeHike is a way of letting people write down or set up what the path that they took is. And to be able to kind of draw a clear line from where they started to where they tried to get to, and hopefully they got there, and either to use it as a way of a to-do list almost, of planning how you want to get there, but hopefully people have already done it. The idea is long-term. People have already done the thing that you want to do, and they've laid down a trail of all of the resources that they went to get that, the topics of things that they learned about and the resources relating to those topics, plus possibly some helpful notes about it. There's a whole meta layer about what to look out, what not to look out, some notes about this book was good in this way, or, anyway, the idea just being that it's a guide. You've provided a guide for the next person. And so the next person who comes along can come to the site and go, well, what is it that I want to do? Where am I starting from? Where do I want to get to? And what are the trails I have to take in order to get there? And those trails are made up of steps to get through the trail, and each step has resources for how to learn about that. A step being more like a topic, some chunk, some piece. And by doing that and getting community feedback about what resources were good, what trails make sense in what order, and what trails make sense altogether to achieve some higher level thing is the effectively, the basic premise of what CodeHike is. Taking advantage and working synergistically with all of the other resources that are out there, as opposed to being a competitor to them. I don't know, did I miss anything?
Not that I could think of from a conceptual level.
Okay. I don't know, to go into specifics about how I was kind of thinking about it, and a lot of this is written in, anyone listening there, just search in GitHub, search for CodeHike, or specifically generically loud, which is my handle on GitHub, generically loud CodeHike, and you'll find the GitHub repository. If you look in the issues, we've had quite a bit of discussion already about what CodeHike is and what the pieces of it are. We've started going down the road of what's the basic first step iteration of it. But I guess maybe I'll go through a little bit of what my vision of how it would be organized is. Is that okay with you guys?
Well, I think you're also making two decisions. One of them is whether or not you're going to be having the general public writing the content and writing reviews, or if it's going to be a core group of people that's making the content with input from the community through comments or surveys or guidance.
Yeah. I think that gets right to the heart of the issue. One of the first things I posted, because I've had to do this in piecemeal, trying to get feedback from everybody and in my time, and anyone participating is phenomenal for putting their time in. I have only so much time myself. I don't think I'd be able to do this project at all if it was just me doing it. So I really appreciate anyone who wants to get involved. The pieces that I've done so far talking about, I've put out, the basic idea of, you've got kind of, I don't know, 3 or 4 levels, I guess you'd say. The biggest thing is the hike. The idea is this is almost like what you call if you were to make analogies to a more conventional education system, a hike might be like a degree or a specialization or some set of courses maybe.
And I kind of think of it like a playlist on YouTube, like you watch all these videos and then you walk away with something.
Yeah, the idea, yeah. But basically, the idea is the hike is the biggest thing. Even if we don't define exactly what that means, the hike is the biggest thing. A hike contains trails. And a trail is a lot more specific to a topic. And again, if I were to make an analogy to a more conventional system, it would be kind of like a course, single course. A trail might be learning Git. A trail might be learning. I wouldn't even necessarily say learning JavaScript or learning Ruby. It would probably be even smaller than that. I think learning or even learning Git, it's probably learning the basics of Git. Git level 1. The idea is it's a chunk that's big enough that you've gotten it, and if there was something you needed to do, it's enough that you could then do that thing. If you break it into pieces, in order to be a web developer, modern day, you probably need to know source control. You probably need to know Git. Do you need to know every last detail about Git? No. But this learning Git is the first chunk that most people are going to need to know in order to do their job, to be a web developer.
That sounds like the track system that's on Treehouse, where you have like this big overarching goal, and then you'll have courses in it, and then there's videos inside of it, smaller activities.
Sure. And that's exactly the thing. I mean, you've hit on something there. The fact is that what this is trying to do is not something completely new. I mean, obviously, every educational system has something similar. There's a logical organization to content. You want to become a web developer. You go to Treehouse. You say, all right, I want to do this thing. Now it's going to break up. Do these things. Then do these things. This is your learning Git. This is your learning Ruby. This is your learning JavaScript. The problem with Treehouse or anything else out there is that they are a silo of content.
Right.
They have specifically the courses that they have, specifically the resources they have, and specifically the order they have, and it's all controlled. It's tightly controlled. It is a curated experience. If what you want to learn is not on Treehouse, then obviously Treehouse isn't going to be able to help you. If the path you need to take through Treehouse doesn't fit with what Treehouse wants you to do, then it's not as good a fit anymore. And that's true about everywhere, and that's not a bad thing. It just is what it is. They're the content producers, and what CodeHike is trying to do is say, and you could have a trail that is one-to-one with something on Treehouse.
Right.
Because the value of what CodeHike is trying to do is not to provide the content, it's to organize for yourself. It's almost like a project management tool for yourself. I know, Christopher, you used Trello. That was a great use case for thinking about CodeHike. You have a Trello board for all the things you want to learn. It's effectively an organized to-do list. In order to be able to be, a .NET developer, I need to know these things, I need to know these things, I need to know these things, these go in this category, so I'm going to learn this and this and this and then this, and here I got to be able to do this, this, and this. So that's kind of what this is doing, but it's taking it to the next level of being able to share it with other people, to get feedback from other people, and to kind of be able to organize it at multiple levels. And so I see nothing wrong with a trail that maps to a Treehouse, course or whatever. I see nothing wrong with a trail that maps to a book, where each step is a chapter. I think there's lots of ways of mapping all the resources that exist, but also being able to mix and match and combine. And I think that's a powerful thing.
Now, there are different types of learners. There are people that learn through hands-on, people that learn through reading, and people that learn through videos. And in my experience, that's where a lot of people get lost. They'll find one great resource that these are amazing videos, but if that's not how you learn, you're lost. And so in the trails, you can combine that. You can say, like, hey, you want to learn Git, or you want to learn Meteor, or you want to learn Node. And here are different ways that you can do it. Here are books that are really great and have been reviewed. Here are videos you can go to. And here are some online places that you can play with the code, like CodePen or something like that will run this.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And again, that's what's so great about being able to be cross-resource, cross-site. You know, and this is a little bit, I'm not 100%. I don't have a perfect vision of this. I've thought about it a few ways. Like, for example, that example, you're learning Git. I mean, we keep coming back to it. You're learning Git. Here are all the ways of learning it. And what you could do, I mean, one hypothetical way you could do it is that there is like one learning Git trail that gets referenced and reused all over the place. And the steps in it are effectively codified. But within each step, how do you check out? How to use a branch, how do you know, whatever those steps are, whatever those pieces are, that within each one are many resources, all contributed from different places with notes from people who've contributed saying like why this resource is good, reviews from people who have then used that resource and they want to say, yeah, I'm going to rate this resource with 5 stars, it's great. But then to even have a metadata system under that, so tagging it, so you could tag resources as videos, as hands-on learning, as all the ways
exactly
that you said are
about.
Things that different types of learners learn differently, and to be able to tag those resources, is tremendously helpful, I think. Now, whether it would make more sense to make 2 separate trails and say, well, this is a trail for that one person said this is a great way to learn Git, and these are the way I'm going to break down the steps, and these are the resources it's going to have, and have one person do it one way and one person do it another way, and then they're both available. That's a possibility, and I don't have the answer for which way is best. I think that's the type of thing that's going to come out in actually doing it and trying it. On the one hand, I want to say, yeah, it should be like one thing. This is learning Git. Maybe many people have kind of made separate learning Gits, and they've been voted up and they've been modified until we kind of, as a community, came to one notion of this is the best way to learn Git. But as you said, there isn't one right way of learning something. Different people learn things different ways. Is there room for multiple learning Gits, and how would you find which learning Git is the right one for you? Or is it enough that you can say the trail is the same, the steps are the same, but the resources are the area that allows for multiple resources? I always wanted to have multiple resources, but is it enough? Can you codify at the trail and step level enough, and then leave it up to resources and tagging to find the best ones?
Something that does kind of worry me in the future is that if we're going to go with an upvote system, that eventually we're going to have pages and pages of things that people just aren't going to go through page 5 or 6 because they're so low voted that they just don't even care about that.
Well, and I think that there's interesting aspects to that, and that's exactly the kind of thing that came up, and I'm glad we're getting into the meat of the system, whether it should be curated and whether it should just be allowed for lots of people and voting and community feedback to do things. I think it's interesting. I do think that Stack Overflow is an interesting model for this. It's not exactly the same. It's certainly not exactly the same, but it is an interesting thing. Obviously, they have a voting system. They have a reputation system, so that you gain privileges as you gain as you've done things in the system. So it could very well be that anyone who joins can make their own hikes, trails, and steps, but it's private to them. They can't make them public because it's going to pollute the system. And then, at some point when they've gained more reputation, they can say, well, because here's the thing, I foresee it being a mix, and I'm not sure the best way to do it. I think that steps are going to be probably the most shared. You want to talk about Git. There may be two different trails because this one may want to include these steps and this one may want to include these steps and in different orders. But why there shouldn't be more than one, branching step, for example. Why? That is a concept. That is a chunk. The community has decided that is a reasonable chunk to call a step. No matter what trail learns Git, branching is going to be in there. Git branching is a step. I see that as being able to be pretty well codified, and I think that step could effectively be similar to a wiki page or a Stack Overflow question where, the question, if you look at Stack Overflow, someone asks a question, it gets created by a user at some point, but eventually, it can be edited like a wiki. And the answers can get upvoted and edited as well. And so, you can effectively think about a step similar to that. Someone has a step, they've described what that step is, they've named what the step is, it's Git branching. They've got a short explanation of what Git branching is because, again, it's not the content, but a good description of it is a good thing to have. And then you're going to have a lot of resources that people have put in, and those resources are going to get upvoted and reviewed and things. And in a way that's very similar to what a Stack Overflow question is. If it's a good question, it's going to get upvoted. It's going to get people editing it to make sure that it doesn't have errors in it and it's described as well as it can be. The answers are going to get upvoted so that it doesn't matter if there's a million answers because the ones at the bottom aren't super important. The ones at the top have what you need. So, from that level, I think that makes sense. I think there's a fairly clear path on that. At the higher levels, I don't know. It's kind of interesting. I think that, as we've said, you could have similar trails. Does it pollute things? I don't know. I know if I were learning Git and there was a pre-existing trail that was really good, I would probably follow it. But if along the way I wanted to insert one extra step in there, what would be the right solution?
Well, if it was a Wikipedia page, you would submit some sort of comment or like a pull request of hey, here's a great resource you might add.
Exactly, and that's when I was writing in the GitHub issues about how I picture trails. That's exactly the way I see it. I see it being something where someone could say, I want to fork this trail, modify it, and supply a pull request back. And if the person, and so a step is almost like a wiki. At the step level, I picture it being kind of globally owned resource. A trail, though, I feel like maybe is more owned by the person who made the trail or collection of people that, have the ability to update or modify it, merge it in. But it may very well work that you have your version of the trail and I have a forked version of the trail, and my fork is useful to me. Maybe it's just me, but maybe other people see it, and maybe it's something that, when you're looking at the trail. I mean, if you look at GitHub, you look at the way that they do things, you can see what forks have forked off of something. Hypothetically, or you could see issues, you could see pull requests, and I don't know if it's the best way, but hypothetically, if you wanted to do it, it makes sense to me that someone could make a personal fork and change what they want, because ultimately, for the person who's trying to walk the path, they want it to say what it needs to say. They want to have all the to-dos in there that they need to have. If each step is effectively a to-do, they want to be able to have the ones that they need. If they need to insert one somewhere, they should be able to. And then at an even higher level, a hike, I see a hike. I'm curious if anybody's going to wind up sharing hikes.
The hike
I almost feel like a hike, everyone's going to fork the hike. There may be a good hike out there that you want to copy, but you're probably going to mess around with it.
So when you have a hike, is that something that is your personal path that you have defined?
Well, and I guess that's what I mean. It's open for conversation, but that's effectively what I'm saying. I think I think it is your personal hike. I don't see any reason why they can't be shared. I think
Right.
that makes sense to share them. I think it makes sense that if someone is learning how to be a developer, that there's some set of trails that make sense. It makes sense to say, you need to learn Git, you need to learn this, you need to learn that, you need to learn that, and to be able to kind of copy that. But then you say, I don't want to learn Ruby, so I'm going to swap out Ruby for Python, right?
And you
Like,
can
and why,
really pick your own path. And I see like three main values of this. One, as a new beginner, whenever I'm trying to learn like a new language or something, I'm like, where do I go to learn that? Like JavaScript, you can find a lot of resources. But if you want to learn Meteor, which is something my class is talking about, I'm like, I don't know where to go. Like they took down hosting. I have a book that's out of date. Like, where do I go to learn that? If I had one website, it would be my dashboard. I would go there when I wanted to learn something, and I would bookmark stuff so that I know, like, oh, I'm learning in this class SQL, and I'm going to be learning how to do database management, so I'm going to go through these as supplemental or self-taught. The second one is that kind of peer accountability where you are publicly promising to do something, that same kind of thing whenever you promise that you're going to write 750 words a day or you're going to eat healthy, and then all of your community check back on you to see your progress so that they can say, like, you're doing well, you're meeting your goals, or is everything okay, are you stuck, can we help? So it has that big community sense, which the other sites don't always have.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing. I kind of see it being that dashboard, exactly like you said. I think that's what it is. I mean, if you were to summarize it in a word, it could be the dashboard for learning how to code or learning skill, arbitrary things. It doesn't have to be learning to code. You know how to code, but you're trying to learn something new. It's the dashboard for learning. And yeah, I think that there's a lot of room for social aspects. I think that makes a ton of sense. I think that there's all kinds of great things. I mean, it's one of the things I liked about the hiking as a metaphor. There's a certain amount of locality to things. The idea could be that that it shows what other people are on the step that you're on, and to be able to talk about that, to have chat software built in or whatever, to be able to communicate and get help on when you're on a certain step and you have questions about things, then that happens. And I think one of the things I wanted to be able to have that I hadn't quite written down anywhere is two pieces. If you're making a trail, that effectively, yeah, you're laying out steps, but more than that, you're writing a trail guide. You're saying, do this step next, and here's maybe some notes about why you would want to do that. And then take this step next, and here's some notes about that. And you're guiding someone through that, and maybe you're picking, if you were making a trail and you're reusing steps, you might say which resources you think may make the most sense that you want to recommend. Steps are reusable, but if you make a trail and you use a step that someone else made, you may say, hey, for my trail, for my version of the trail, I'm providing a guided experience. I'm taking notes about steps, and I'm also saying for this step, I recommend this and this resource, and then the people who are then walking that trail after you would have, I think it would be really great to effectively have, I guess you'd call it like a trail journal, right? Where when they go through those steps, they write down things that they learned, which resources they wound up taking, and to build, if you're talking about content, that's the real content, right? It's all of these people collectively doing stuff that when they went to this blog post to do this thing, they realized that the person who was writing about that, they missed this step, or maybe it's not up to date anymore, or maybe I don't know, whatever it is about it, but the idea, and then people are able to read those and they're able to upvote those, so that like it's all this collective community experience, so that every person who walks the path adds benefit to it.
And I keep thinking that you're doing reviews. Like on Amazon, if I buy a product,
Yeah.
I can write a review of it, but then people can also underneath say,
Upvote the
am I
review.
helpful?
Yeah, exactly. No, exactly.
When I've been thinking about it, it's kind of been like a wiki page where you see all the information and then there's a discussion kind of like hidden behind it.
Yeah,
You know?
sure.
But
Sure, yeah.
on trails and such, since we're people are creating them, sharing them, forking them, do you think we should have like a way of tracking who originally created what? Like this trail was made by this person, but it's been shared a billion times.
Yeah, and I mean, well, and I think that you probably would, and I think that's the kind of thing that's going to build reputation, right? You know, if you make a step that other people use, if you, you know, if you edit something, if you leave a review and other people upvote it, upvote your review, if you know, like all those things, if you leave good, you know, trail guide notes, if you leave good, you know, journal entries of the things that you've done, you know, all that's going to feed back, I think. And I think that you can sort of build out a social network, so to speak, of the people that are hikers and what they're learning. And, you know, you could have people you're connected with and you'd see what they're doing. You know, you could maybe go on a hike with someone. You could use that as the metaphor, saying, well, I've got trail buddies. You know, they're people that I'm going to learn this thing with other people at the same time, and just provide a way of doing that.
Well, I've built badges with activities in them for other types of things, and the idea was that you would curate an experience and you would break it up into small pieces so that when they completed the badge they would have been able to accomplish something, but it was always allowed them to do things a la carte. And it created a really great uniform experience because it was a small team making the content, but it also is limited so that only what we are able to produce could be put on the website for that experience, for that challenge. So we opened it up so that people could just basically on a second page fill out a form and give us the rough outlines of a badge so that we then, the people that understand the site, could generate that content. And that could be another way to engage. So there's two ways to participate. One could be as a hiker, someone that is just reading the content and using it. And if you're like, hey, this could be changed, or here's a subject that I'm learning about that I think should be here, there's like a whole second page, that discussion page of the wiki, like you had mentioned.
Right. Yeah, I mean, I think to me, the key that I think we have to kind of make a decision on is like, how closed and how hierarchical is this? The way Stack Overflow does it, they have a reputation system that bootstraps itself in an automatic sort of way, such that there isn't like a top, you know, exactly. It can function very well without needing, you know, like a cabal of secret super users supervising everything and making sure that it's okay, but rather relying on the community and relying on this notion of escalating privilege automatically based on participation. You know, at some point in Stack Overflow, you can ask a question, but you can't up or downvote things. And then I think you probably, I don't know, you probably can upvote things before you can downvote things. And then you need more reputation to be able to comment on things and to, you know, and so there's this whole escalating level. And then at some point you can edit other people's stuff. And then at some point you're reviewing the edits of other people to make sure that those people are making edits that work. You know, so I mean, and I don't know. I guess I don't know exactly the exact ins and outs of Wikipedia. I know anyone can sign up to do it, and obviously there's a peer review aspect of it. I don't know exactly how the privilege system works.
Oh, we got a new person.
Hey, Joseph.
Hey.
Hey, hello.
Hello.
All
Yes,
right.
how's it going?
I'd
Pretty
say the
good. Joseph,
Wikipedia.
why don't you introduce yourself? Because we all did that in the beginning.
Okay, Joseph, and I build applications in Ruby and JavaScript. Um, I set up a Rails application today already, and I was looking at what I update on the GitHub issues, and so far I'm trying to make a database schema based on that.
Great. So you saw the ER diagram, and you're basing it off of that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Cool. Yeah. Yeah. So Joseph is actually getting stuff done. So that's good. The rest of us slackers.
Hey.
You know what?
Um,
I started exploring Node.js, and so I love the way it's been so far. So I've been using Express for a bit, and I'm thinking soon enough I could have Node communicating with the Rails application.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, I guess that's a good status update. So yeah, so I mean, just to cover some of the things that we've talked about. Everyone here has contributed, of course. I'm just kidding. I think I just meant I think Joseph's the first one who's committed, or you've got a fork going for the code. I assume.
Yeah.
Oh, you've got a fork of the yeah. It's actually not the first code contribution because somebody code up the landing page for the CodeHike.org page coming soon.
Yeah.
So that's cool. So yeah, we've got some stuff going. Albert made an ER diagram, and then of course we've all contributed to discussion and talks about what this is and what it should be and where we're going to go. So, and Jamie cleaned up the wiki, which was awesome. Yeah, when you just joined in, Joseph, what were you talking? We were talking about the notion of how curated an experience we think CodeHike should be, and I think we all agree that it has to be something that is community driven enough that other people can be making new trails and new hikes and new steps, because certainly nobody here knows everything. And so there is so much going on in the tech world that the only way we're going to be able to have a comprehensive set of trails and steps and resources is for a lot of people to be able to contribute. But figuring out exactly to what level people could contribute and how much of an editorial hand there needs to be and how that would happen is kind of what we're discussing.
One thing that might also
be
helpful, whenever I was making the badge system, is that the first badge is about how to play the game. So if we made a trail, the first trail could be how to make a trail, and that would also help us solidify how the site will work.
Yeah, that was actually something that I think Christopher and I discussed in one of our GitHub issues, right? You had written one about kind of what you kind of expect just starting up, and I had said that we probably put a trail or a hike right in your plate so that when you signed up, you've already got one, and it explains kind of how the system works, and you would follow the trail, and the trail would kind of teach you.
It's like a little interactive tutorial of
exactly.
Click here to do this, click here to do that, make your first trail.
Yeah.
Share your first trail, that kind of thing.
Yeah. So, and I mean, I don't know that everybody's necessarily going to want to start making trails, but I mean, it could certainly be a trail. I think it would obviously make sense for there to be a trail that teaches you how to use CodeHike as a reader or as a hiker, but then also as a trailblazer. And I don't know if we would necessarily make it so that everybody kind of had that on their plate, or if that was just a thing that that people would easily find. But I mean, it could certainly be one that they have. Yeah, I mean, they'd probably be separate hikes or separate trails. It was like one is teaching you how to hike, and one is teaching you how to make new trails. I don't know if they'd be the same hike. Maybe they'd be the same hike but two different trails. I don't know.
Yeah, so when the sign up, they could have that skill come up and other hikes suggested below that.
Yeah, and I mean, I think there's a whole lot that we can think about and talk about in terms of guiding people to the hikes or trails that are useful. I mean, there's the obvious just searching for things. But I think that there's a whole world of possibility for getting people to the right stuff. I mean, obviously, if you look at, again, referencing just other successful products, I mean, if you look at the way Amazon has, you buy this product, we recommend these products. I mean, that's certainly the kind of thing that if you're on a trail, we could figure out other people who've done this trail have done that trail. Or if you're on a step on one trail, you could see other trails that intersect, right? So like if you're on, I don't know, something about JavaScript, and you're on some step about learning closures, maybe there'd be some intersection of another trail that uses that same step. And, maybe we provide feedback that, oh, you're now intersecting with another trail, or you start finding other people that are doing the trails that you're doing, and then you can connect with those people, and that helps you find other trails because those people are doing something else. I think there's lots of ways of guiding people.
Yeah, right. So, Jamie posted a link.
What's that? Sorry. Joseph, did you say something?
I just said Jamie posted a link. So.
Oh, yeah. That is the badge system, right? That you were talking about? Open source Oracle Teen Summer Challenge. No? We got dead air. I'll keep talking. If there's something that I think Joseph was talking about the links you're posting, Jamie. Did you want to talk about them?
Sure. I had created different badge systems, and I was just finding the ones that were kind of related to technology. Just, I guess, more of a confirmation. Is this the kind of thing that you're thinking a trail would be like, where it's broken up into little steps that are different points that still link out to external resources, but you earn points by doing something on the CodeHike site? Or is it more of a review system, more kind of like Game Informer or Board Game Geek, where you're writing reviews of stuff?
No, it's not. It's not like that. It would probably be more like, I'm sorry because I'm still like looking at this. So open source Oracle, you're saying, is a challenge, and you're saying that's kind of like a trail.
Yeah. It was something that we created so that, you would create an account on this site, and there's a whole bunch of different challenges or badges, and you would do the steps, and you can do them in whatever amount that you wanted. But, there would be videos, there would be a mix of, like, trivia, although you guys probably wouldn't want trivia, although it could be, like, what's the code that you use and get to push, that kind of thing, confirmation quizzy. But is this what you think?
So I mean, the one thing I would say about this, because I'm just looking at it, I'm looking at open source Oracle, and like there's a video, and that's 5 points, and then there's Oracle open source Oracle source code, and that's another video, and I guess to me that's like kind of. That's not to say that resources wouldn't be videos, because they totally would, but resources would belong to a step. And a step would be belonging to a trail. And so the idea would be is that you could almost read it like a book with chapters or a course lesson plan, where you could kind of see, like, this is trying to teach you something, and it's showing you the path you would want to take in order to learn it. And it's pointing out to resources that would do that. Whereas this challenge, it seems like a bunch of like only loosely related things, where it's like, these are all things that relate to, um, you know, open source, I guess. Is that?
This one was about getting them understanding what open source was and exposed to different things, and eventually understanding what Linux is, and playing around with some console things. It was designed for teenagers, but
Yeah.
is that what a step
Well,
is?
I mean, but this is, I guess what I was saying is that this is not an organized, how do I say this? This is not as, I mean, this is a cool like list of resources, I guess, and it's got points, which is cool. But I guess what I'm saying is, like, the difference between this and what I'm envisioning is that, maybe other people are envisioning something else, but what I would envision is that, I guess, I don't even know. I mean, I guess codifying it as steps of learning something. So if you hypothetically wanted to have an open source trail, I don't know, I guess I wouldn't have thought of open source as a trail topic, like as a trail. I guess hypothetically it could be, I don't know. To me, a trail would be more like, how do you contribute to a GitHub project or something, like a thing that teaches you something more concrete, maybe, as opposed to a list of resources specifically. Like, if anyone else, feel free to chime in if that makes sense what I'm saying. Like Linux, for example, you have a video on Linux, but obviously, like, Linux is a huge topic.
Right.
So, like, while this video might be a great video, I haven't seen it, maybe it's a great introduction to what Linux is, Linux would be a whole trail in itself, or possibly a hike. Does that make sense?
I'm not saying that we're taking this content verbatim. I'm trying to
frame
it in my experience and understand what each thing is and define the vocabulary.
Sure, and I guess I'm just trying to say what the differences are between what I think they are. But I don't know if that made sense.
It does to me. I don't know if it makes sense to anybody else. Because this goal was more of a, I'm introducing you and I'm giving you a taste for it. That was the goal of that site. As opposed to where you want to, if you're doing an open source badge, you want them to be able to already have contributed to some open source project and understand the whole gamut of what that entails and how do you get along with people that you aren't seeing. I mean, like, there's a whole different skill set that you
there's a whole range of there's a whole range of things. I mean, I guess for me, I think of CodeHike as being more like skill specific, like you're learning a skill, you're learning a set of things that are then like more concrete than I know what Linux is, basically, because I watched a video on Linux.
Well, the second one is also
and there may be room for that because like maybe that's the kind of thing that like you could hypothetically have a trail, and I'm just thinking out loud here, like you could hypothetically have a trail or a step that is then going to like effectively branch out to all these other things, and maybe that's exactly the kind of thing that we think about as an interesting use case. Like, you want to learn more about open source. Well, here's a list of resources, but each of these resources is just the jumping off point to a trail. Right, like, because like each one of these things that is a thing that you may have a video or an article or a bit of notes about, like the Raspberry Pi. Well, learning how to use a Raspberry Pi is obviously a very large topic, and so that could be a whole trail in itself, and that trail would have steps, and that and each of those steps would have resources. And so boiling it down to one resource might make sense if you were to make a step. You could have a single step that would be kind of like this, that would be like, learning about open source, and and like whether it would be multiple steps, and you'd have a step for Linux and a step for Raspberry Pi and a step for GitHub and a step for whatever, and maybe each of those steps would have some things like these videos and whatever, but it would only be a way of sort of introducing you to the topic. I mean, I think that could certainly make sense. But to me, a trail is an ordered list of steps where each step is teaching you a piece of the whole, the way a course would have a lesson plan, where the first week you're learning about this piece, and then the next thing builds off of that and builds off of that. It's ordered, or a book with chapters. It's kind of roughly ordered so that by the end of that trail, you're going to have learned a thing. So I don't know, but and in terms of points, I don't even know exactly. I don't know that you would necessarily get points by having performed a step, but I guess maybe you would. I'm trying to think. I don't know. I guess for me, yeah, I'm curious. There's a lot we could do with a gamification of the system. I don't know. I don't know what people think. I know it can be a motivator, having completed things. I think it's like, I don't know if it's
demotivating too, because a lot of the people that come to it, they already have an interest in doing it, and then you give them points, and if we want the site mostly just to be like, hey, you want to learn something, and here's a path to do it, adding points on it isn't going to motivate anyone to do more.
Right.
And it may,
well, yeah, and that's the thing. I think what's interesting is I don't think you should get and there's lots you can read about extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation and points and rewards. And to me, having accomplished it is its own reward. What might work in terms of gamification and points and things is doing the things that are helpful feedback to the system. So, for example, you might get points for leaving a review on a resource, because like leaving a review is not something that's inherently rewarding. Learning a thing is rewarding. Having gone and looked at that resource and evaluated that resource for yourself might be rewarding, but giving your feedback on it is the piece that I think would be maybe worth points, because that's about showing that you've. Wait, sorry.
So just like awarding points for adding value to the system, not just going through the system.
Right, and that's a matter of not necessarily being points that means, hey, I should feel awesome about myself because I have points, although you might. I think what it means is we trust, as a system, we trust you more. And that's the idea with Stack Overflow. While, yeah, I think certainly Stack Overflow has a motivation in terms of, like, you've answered a question well, you get points, and that, I think it certainly motivated some people to do it. I don't think that's necessarily a great system for rewarding people for learning something. But one of the things that was important is the idea that if you have answered a question in a way that other people like, it does say something about your knowledge, that you're a real human being, and that we impart just a little bit more trust on you. And the fact is, if you've answered enough questions that have been upvoted, we're going to trust you enough to let you edit a question. We're going to give you enough trust to realize that you are a human being that knows what they're talking about. You're not trying to game the system. You're trying to participate in the system. And that, to me, is the kind of reputation.
When you're describing it like that, we're not wanting to reward writing a review, because anybody can write a review. They can just say, that sucks, and then they would get points. What you want to reward is people that find your trail or your step valuable. So you would want to get points based on the upvote.
You're absolutely right. You would have to do it that way. It would, well, but it could be that someone upvotes your review. Because, like, even again, if you look at Stack Overflow, you don't get points for answering a question. You get points for answering a question and having it get upvoted. Right? And that means that you've written a valuable answer. And in the same way, If you write a review and it gets upvoted, then that means that you have participated in a valuable way. So writing a review, writing, your trail journal notes, or making a new trail, making a new step, whatever. I want people to be able to get points without creating new. I want hikers who are pretty much all they do is hike. They're not blazing trails. I think they should be able to get reputation too. And the way they would do that is by leaving notes and leaving reviews. But you're right, leaving a garbage review is not helpful. It has to be a helpful review. And that's what upvoting reviews is
Okay.
valuable for, I guess.
So for the points, we could imagine the points goes to the people leaving the resources and the people leaving the reviews on the resources.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. And I mean, other pieces of the process too, steps, trails, hikes. But yeah, people at the lowest level, if you're doing a step, you're following along a trail someone has already written out, it's not that hard to Google to find other things relating to that step you're already on. That's a thing that someone who's a learner, who is a hiker, absolutely could do and should do, right? There are resources that someone has listed, but if you're paying attention, or you Google, you look around, you might find other resources that nobody has listed before, and that's something that's easy to do, to add a new resource and be like, well, I was learning about JavaScript closures, and I found this Stack Overflow entry that explained it well, this blog post that explained it well, this chapter of this book that explained it well, whatever.
So it seems like the pain point that we are trying to solve is that there is a lot of information out there as you're trying to learn, and we're trying to help put it in one place so it's easier to discover, and you spend less time trying to find the thing that'll help you learn what you want or understand something you're stuck on.
Yeah, I think it specifically answers two major questions. What should I be learning about now? And what resources can I find to be able to learn it? Because I've heard from a lot of people on CodeNewbie, and that's really one of the reasons why I even thought about it to begin with, is you hear a lot of people who feel a little bit lost. They've started down the road of doing free code camp or some other online resource, but they feel like they're missing some pieces. They feel like, I don't know exactly what I should be doing next in order to be able to get a job. Like, am I missing some knowledge? Am I missing some experience? Am I missing something? And they don't necessarily know exactly. Maybe they did a boot camp, but now they just don't know exactly what to do next. And so this intends to help solve that part of the problem of what do I do next, because this is not just a bucket of resources. If it was just a bucket of upvoted resources, you'd be right back where you started from, which is, sure, there's all these kinds of things that I could learn, but which ones should I be learning? Which one is the most important next one to learn in order to say I'm done? Not necessarily I'm done, but I'm done enough that I should feel accomplished, that I should feel like I am a web developer, or that I don't have major gaps in my knowledge when I want to go apply for a job or whatever.
Well, I have to leave, but it was great chatting with you guys and getting a better understanding of the project. So I'm not sure how much longer you guys are going to talk.
I was going to wrap it up because it's 8 o'clock. But closing thoughts from anybody?
I can't really think of much. We've covered a lot of things in a short amount of time.
I think
really is what we need to come together and figure out what we're going to do next.
What we're going to do next. Well, I think Joseph is thankfully trying to start that piece, which is he's working on a Ruby on Rails backend to kind of get our basic entities together. I think it would be great, and Jamie, this would be a great point to come in. I think for me, I work both ends, but I do tend to think a lot in terms of UI, just in terms of figuring out how to solve a problem. So I think figuring out pieces of the UI while the back end is starting to get room. We know the basics, but maybe start thinking about what our different screens are, how they would work, you know, how you would interact with them, just maybe some wireframes or something. If somebody wanted to do that, that would be really great. But no, either way, I think Joseph will probably have something we can kind of work with, and then once he's got something local, I'll maybe set up a server on DigitalOcean or something. Maybe we could deploy to.
Okay.
And then we can start playing and
but I'll just
figuring
say
out
okay.
Okay. Well, I guess, Jamie, you said you feel much more confident in the front end.
Yeah, just because I have experience with that, and like I did a class with PHP and JavaScript and HTML and CSS, and so like the back end, I've made games in Python. I've never learned Ruby. I kind of know Java. I understand the algorithms. Java, the language, and I don't get along. So I think Ruby and I probably won't get along either.
Oh,
but
I don't know why. No, they're very different languages. I don't know why.
They're both object-oriented. Anyway.
Well, sure. That's fair, I guess. Python is too. But anyway, at the very least, I guess what I'm saying is if we're trying to figure out next steps, Joseph's getting the basics of a back and go so that are you using like the scaffolding to generate basic interactive forms to get the CRUD stuff in, or were you going to try to work Express in to talk to it, or?
Yeah, I was open the Node.js application will try to talk to the Rails API. So Rails will basically just create APIs, controllers, no views on the Rails application.
Okay. All right. Well, I guess then what I think is probably the most necessary next step is to get some wireframes of screens together, get some HTML. And does anybody feel confident enough to like try to put together effectively a design of the HTML we want for some of these screens, or do you guys?
I've done a lot of stuff in Balsamic, which is just kind of like wireframes, but outside of that, I'm not the best.
That's okay.
Yeah.
So I think
okay.
I think it would be great if there was someone that could make mockups in Photoshop or Sketch and just make it available to anyone.
Well, certainly, I think be great. But you're not answering, so.
It's kind of freezy on my end too.
Okay. All right. Well, why don't we just close it up? We can chat maybe in Slack or whatever, and figure out next steps. So I don't know if you heard me. I said if you wanted to do Balsamic mockups, that would be great.
Okay. I hadn't done it before because I wasn't sure 100% what it was going to be like, because my experience had been just with the Teen Summer Challenge, which is kind of badges, and I'm like, is that what we're doing, or are we doing something else? But I can make...
Well, here's the thing. It's always easier to talk to something that exists than to talk to something that doesn't. So even if what you have is radically different than everything else that we're all envisioning something completely different, it's a lot easier to figure out where we want to go once we have something that we can all look at and talk to.
Okay. I can't get that done tonight because I have to
Don't worry about it. Neither can I or anybody else here. So whenever you get it, we'll probably be fine. If it's going to be a month before you think you can get it, then maybe someone else should step in. But if it's going to be a few days, that's totally fine. Even if it's going to be over the weekend, I think that would be fine.
And I can normally export them as PDFs. I've done mockups before where they're interactive as PDFs. So, and I've actually imported them into my GitHub repositories before. So I'm happy to just like do a pull request on
All right.
yours.
That sounds perfect.
Okay.
All right. Excellent, everybody. Thank you for all participating. And have a good night.
Good night.
Good night.